What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Simply a Breeze. My name is Bree if you are new here, and today we are going to be talking about our October budget, how I'm intending to set that budget up, some expenses that I need to account for that are abnormal, how Reed and I are tackling having our finances kind of combined together. My husband gets paid in a different way than I get paid. So I get paid twice a month on the 1st and the 15th. My husband gets paid once a week, every Thursday, and his pay is dependent on how much work he gets. So he has a set pay scale. However, it is entirely dependent on the amount of work that he has for the week and the things that he accomplishes. And so we have some varying income challenges that we just have to account for when we write a budget. So I'm going to take you along with me as I set up our budget for October and explain to you how we are adapting to the varying income scenario and how we account for expenses that we don't often have, but we can make sure that we are prepared for them when they arrive. So if you need help setting up a budget for October, please stick around and let me know what you think. I firmly believe having a budget is incredibly important to knowing where your money is going and just making sure that you are spending less than you make. There was a time in my life where I was literally living paycheck to paycheck, and I needed to know exactly where my money was going so I could make sure I could afford the things to make sure I was living, such as my rent, my water, my heat, my food, and food for my cat. So these are important things that you need to know if you can at least cover those essential bills. And that's why I love a budget, because it adapts to what you're doing. It changes with what you need and with what you want and with what you can afford. And it helps lay everything out so you know what you need to cover, how much money you need to make, and whether or not you are overspending or if you are underspending, which is always a great thing. So let's get this budget started. Okay, so the first thing that we need to tackle is income, like what kind of income we have for the month. So in the month of October, I get paid on the 1st, and I get paid on the 15th of every month, always. My husband, because he gets paid every Thursday, he's going to get paid 5 times in the month of October. What we do for my income, I get the same paycheck every 1st and every 15th of the month. So my income is, for lack of a better word, my income is steady. Even though my husband also has a steady income, he'll always get paid. We just don't always know what exactly it's going to be. It ranges. But then we have a minimum amount that we know my husband is going to make every paycheck. So we operate on the minimum amount he will make every day or every payday, and then knowing what I make. So for privacy reasons, we are only going to tell you the overall minimum number that we make every month. And that number is $8,700 a month. So the next thing that we need to account for is our housing, because housing is incredibly important. So this was number 1, and this is number 2. So for our housing, this is going to include things like our mortgage, internet, our utilities, and those utilities include electric, gas, water, and trash pickup. Okay, so those are all of the things that are included in our housing. So for housing, our total monthly cost on average is about $25.91.89. Things like our electric bill, our gas bill, and our water bill, they do vary a little bit from month to month. So we go based off of an average. Our mortgage is always the same amount and our internet is always the same amount, as well as our trash. But we do have some fluctuating numbers here. So we just go based off of an average. And as long as we know we can cover this or just a little bit more, we know we're safe. Next is our transportation. Because we both work, we have to drive into the, I have to drive into the office and my husband has to drive to the shop. We need to think of things like maintenance for our vehicles, our tags on the vehicles. Here in the state of Colorado, we are required to do emissions. I may have spelled emissions wrong. And we need to take into account the gas that we need to purchase as well. So on average, because I commute an hour, my husband commutes 30 minutes, we also like to go into the mountains, we hunt, we fish. So this is all of the gas that we tend to spend on average, on top of any emissions, any tags, any maintenance. So that's all of this number combined is approximately $800. Food is something that I like to always budget for next after these three things are accounted for. And that is because we all need to eat. We all need to make sure we have food. So we're going to tackle food next. So I have groceries and eating out. On average, our overall food bill is less than the number I'm about to give you because we are going to be traveling this month to go to a friend's wedding and everything. So we are going to be eating out for a couple of days, and that's totally going to change the way that this number looks compared to an average. So this month we are estimating that we are going to spend over $800 on food. That includes us eating out while we are on vacation. That also includes me having to go to the grocery store and purchase meats. So we don't need to purchase red meat, but we do need to purchase things like chicken and pork. And I like to do those things in bulk at Costco. So that is a big upfront cost. And so that's also rolling into this total right here. So our total for this month is going to be much higher than average, but we did take into account the fact that we are traveling. So always make sure when you're doing your budget, you take into account things like any travel, any expenses that you know are coming up. Just like we don't always have tags that are due for our vehicles. However, this month we do, so we need to account for that as well, which means we also need to pay for emissions. So that goes into this overall total as well. So things that we need to keep in mind every time we write a budget. The next thing that we are going to account for is other varying bills that we have that come out every month. These are things like our phone, our streaming subscriptions, such as Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, if you have it. This is my gym membership, okay? So things like this need to go into the other bills that I like to account for, whereas these aren't necessities. These I don't need, which is why they're not included in any of this, and I do them after the fact because these aren't necessary. If we needed to make big drastic changes to make sure we could afford things, say I got laid off or my husband got laid off, these, probably with the exception of our phone, would be one of the first things to go in our cutting. But for this month, our total expenses for this category is going to be $311.44. Next up, we tackle insurance, and this is both vehicle insurance and my medical insurance. Because of the type of company that I work for, I am given a stipend every month to cover my medical. And then we also have auto insurance. So these are the two things that also need to be paid and need to be covered. The homeowner's insurance is also wrapped into this right here, so it's separate from this guy. But the total that we are looking at spending this particular month for October is going to be $753.40. And next I cover any debts that we have, and we don't pay on our cars, so we have no car notes. And we don't have anything else. We've got snowmobiles, but everything we have is paid off with the exception of my student loans. Because I went and got a master's degree, I was also told just go ahead and take out the max amount and you can pay it back once you get a job in that field. I do not recommend that approach. I cannot stress that enough. Please don't do that. It is really biting me in the rear end, and it is something my husband and I are going to have to claw our way out of. I was already clawing my way out of it, but now we are married, and he also understands the importance of getting those taken care of. But if you are taking out student loans, I highly recommend you take out the bare minimum. I also encourage you to find other ways to pay for school, because student loans, for lack of a better word, suck to pay back. So my student loans, full disclosure, I don't mind disclosing this to you because I want you to understand how shocking and awful this number is. I pay $1,100 every month just in student loans. I can't imagine also having a car payment on top of a mortgage with the number that I have in student loans. So please, please, please tread with caution when you are looking at student loans. So after this, we cover irregular expenses, things that do not come across us often, but things that we do still need to budget for nonetheless. These would be things like Halloween is around the corner. We're planning for October, so this would be things like extra candy. This would be things like costumes. For us in particular, we will be traveling in the month of October to go to a wedding. So we not only need to account for a wedding gift, but we also need to take into account renting a car. Thankfully, where we are going, we don't have to worry about somewhere to stay. We do have somewhere to stay, and so we don't have to worry about any hotels, but that is something that you would need to include if you did not have housing available to you for free. So overall, this number, we are estimating with the car rental and the wedding gift to be approximately $700. The next category I like to look at is lifestyle. Again, this isn't something that is important and necessary to us living. These are extras. These are things that we just enjoy doing on top of anything that didn't get accounted for in these categories here. Like sometimes I need to take into account shampoo. I don't buy shampoo every month. Sometimes I need to take into account a lamp broke and we need to purchase a lamp or something for bedding. That's what this specifically is covered under, is this miscellaneous category. There's always something you don't account for in your budget. There's something will come up and you don't realize you're going to need it. Say your coffee pot breaks or something like that. I always like to have a little bit of money ready to go for this category in the event that something comes up that you just didn't realize you were going to need. And then, if you notice, I get my nails done. This is a new thing. I have very weak and brittle nails, and I just cannot get them to stop breaking. And when I have my nails done, they seem to last and they're more durable to life. So I do go get my nails done every month, but I do try to limit it to every 4 weeks, and that's also how I save money. I don't go get my hair done often. I don't do any like self-tanning or anything like that. Really, my nails are about as high maintenance as I get. So we are looking at me spending between the nails and any other miscellaneous things. That's what we've got budgeted for our lifestyle category. And then the last category, and this is only last just because it's essential, but I'll explain here in a minute. And it's our savings. Reed and I both have a retirement plan through our company. both through the company I work for and the company that he works for. These are retirement savings outside of that, so it is extra. Therefore, it's not at the top of the list, it's at the bottom of the list while we take care of other important bills and debts first. But I have a retirement and Reed has a retirement plan outside of our employer that we contribute to. And so every month that looks like approximately $882.32. So once I go ahead and I add all of these numbers up, this is the number we need to consider. So our income, and I like to do this just to make sure we can afford everything that's projected for the month. So our income, and we are going to subtract expenses. Okay, and currently when I add up all of our expenses for the month of October, it is $8,095.05. That is a shocking number. Also, mind you, this is our low. This is on average our monthly low income. We can't have the potential to earn more than this. But this is the low number, and this is the number that we felt comfortable sharing because we would like to keep these specific numbers private. So 8,700 minus this is what we're left with, $604.95 of wiggle room at the end of the month, which is better than we would have expected, given that this is low. But what this does is this lets me know that even if we make the bare minimum for the month, we can cover all of our bills and everything that we have projected to come out and clear for the month, okay? It is very important that you walk through this step, especially if you are really tight on money. And this will also help you highlight if you're gonna be overspending for the month. If you're overspending, things like my nails would get cut. Things like our subscriptions would get cut. I would get really, really tight on our grocery budget. Right now, our grocery budget isn't incredibly stringent, but we would hunker down on the grocery budget. We would look at our subscriptions. If we didn't think that this problem would disappear, we needed to start cutting things like subscriptions. And then if nothing else, it's time to start looking at a side hustle like Uber, Lyft. Anything that's going to start making you money, start selling things if you are absolutely desperate to cover your basic necessities like a place to live, how to get to work, how to feed yourself. It's time to start cutting things. But I know making the bare minimum, we are still going to have money left over at the end of the month, so we are set to go. So there are some things that I like to consider for every month. I get paid every 1st and every 15th. Reed gets paid every Thursday. So for the month of October, I'll get paid on a Tuesday and Reed will get paid on that Thursday. However, sometimes the 1st will fall on a Friday and we'll get Reed's paycheck 6-7 days later. I know that my paycheck alone will cover any bills that happen the first 7 days of the month. And then when Reed gets his paycheck, we are set to go because then the income is flowing. So that is something that I always like to make sure that I can cover any bills for the first 7 days of the month. So we're never going to have to worry and wonder if we're going to have enough money to cover all of our bills. Also, this money that we have at the end of the month, once all of our bills clear and say we have $604 left at the end of the month, it's the 30th or the 31st, and we're ready to roll into the next month, I don't always drop this number down to 0 at the end of the month. I may always have a plan for it, so I may designate at least $100 to $200 just to sit in our checking account in the event something happens I know that there's always a buffer going into the next month for us to cover anything. So that is a very big and important thing to consider. Don't always drop your bank account to zero if you can prevent it. I understand I used to live paycheck to paycheck. That wasn't always my reality, but now that it is something that I do to make sure I am set up for the next month. But that's it. This is what our month looks like. Don't forget to take into account any expenses that are abnormal, things that don't clear every month. Remember your tags and your vehicle emissions if it's required. You don't always have those. You're not always going to have vehicle maintenance. Like, I don't need to change my oil every month, but I do know that I'm going to have an oil change next month, right? Stuff like that. I need a new windshield next month. That doesn't happen every month, hopefully. So it's not something I need to account for in every month's budget. So every time you go to set up a budget, you need to consider the things that are going to clear for that specific month. Whereas I know my medical insurance and our auto insurance, it's always going to clear. I know we're always going to have a phone bill. The mortgage is always going to come out, and those things are always going to be the same. So those, I already have a starting line and a baseline. If you are trying to figure out how to account for your groceries, and if you pay in cash, always keep your receipts for the month, and that'll help you realize what your average monthly spending is. If you pay with your debit card, just look at your debit card statement. Pull up any time you went to a grocery store, such as Albertsons or King Soopers or something like that, and highlight all the times you went to the grocery store, and you can get a monthly average from there as well if you look at the past 3 months. You aren't going to get this right every time. I would also like to say, because Reed's income is variable, and sometimes the miscellaneous expense is higher than we expected, or something hits that we weren't anticipating even though we tried, you always need to come back and reevaluate your budget. Reed and I look at our budget once a week. We touch base, make sure everything is on par, make sure we've accounted for all of the correct things that we needed to account for. We also discuss, hey, we noticed we're going to need this expense because, say, we didn't plan on any maintenance with our vehicle, but something is happening and it's not emergent. So if we can find the money to pay for it immediately, we will. But that is what we do every time we check in with our budget. We check in with what's cleared our account, and we check in with anything that may or may not be coming out that we didn't account for. That is how I set up my budget every month. I look at it, I write things down, I have an idea of when every single bill is going to clear the account, which is how I know that my paycheck will cover the first 7 days of bills, is because I know when everything is supposed to clear by date. There are also lots of budgeting apps that are available to you. Some are free, some do ask that you pay. I don't use one that requires payment. I use the Dave Ramsey EveryDollar app. I like the way it's set up and structured. That is actually how I structured this, based off of the categories that he has, based off of the categories that are in the app for me to set this up. But I know there's a bunch of others out there. I know Excel has a budgeter tool in there. And sometimes if you need to write things down, I mean, I did this with pen and paper, okay? Like, you can do this with pen and paper if you need to. Get a spiral notebook at Walmart. I think they're $2 nowadays. I don't know anymore. I don't buy many anymore. But get yourself something to keep track of your money and see it in written form some way, somehow. I have found that to be incredibly beneficial to me, just to see it laid out, because then I can formulate a plan to actually visualize and see the way the numbers play out. Helps me plan and gives me great peace of mind. So hopefully you found this helpful. Hopefully this helps you set up your budget. It helps you navigate how you want to go forward with your finances. And if you have any questions or recommendations, please go ahead and put them in the comments down below. But if you liked this, please consider giving me a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. We do a lot of life skills, learning, navigating, and making sure that you have all the tools that you need to succeed in life. So hopefully you have a good rest of your day, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.